Sean is a high-ranking FBI agent. All his life, he has always hated evil, arrested countless violent robbers, and achieved glorious accomplishments. But because of this, he has also made quite a few enemies. Among them, the one he loathes the most is Castor Troy, a dangerous criminal with a series of horrific crimes. It turns out, 6 years ago, while Sean was playing with his son at an amusement park, Castor Troy, seeking revenge on the FBI, had hidden in the shadows and fired a sniper shot. Sean never expected the bullet to pass through him, causing his little son to die on the spot. The pain of losing his son caused Sean to lose sleep and appetite for 6 long years. He never gave up on hunting down Castor Troy, but unlike other criminals, Castor Troy was both insane and cunning, acting outrageously yet rarely revealing any weaknesses. At this moment, he was hatching another earth-shattering plot. He disguised himself as a priest to infiltrate the Los Angeles Convention Center, planting a chemical bomb on the rooftop. Once detonated, it could spread rapidly, turning all of Los Angeles into a living hell. However, even the most meticulous plan can have a flaw. Castor Troy's younger brother, Pollux, in an attempt to save time, used his own account to rent a commercial plane to help Castor Troy escape from Los Angeles. The account information was quickly discovered by the FBI. Sean immediately dispatched agents to tail him, then led a formidable special forces team to the airport. Just as he predicted, 30 minutes later, Castor Troy arrived at the airport, and the commercial plane was also taxiing on the runway, preparing for takeoff. Faced with this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Sean disregarded his own life, directly driving a Humvee onto the runway to block the plane. The female agent, disguised as a flight attendant, heard the alarm and also drew her weapon, trying to control the situation. Pollux suddenly threw a suitcase, knocking her weapon away and regaining the upper hand. Seeing that the plane could not take off normally, Castor Troy hurriedly escorted the female agent into the cockpit, threatening Sean to obediently clear the runway. But he never expected that Castor Troy, who had lost all humanity, would not only open the cockpit door to taunt him, but also kill the female agent right in front of him. Seeing his colleague's mangled body, Sean erupted in a furious rage, immediately pulled out the pilot, and piloted the helicopter himself in pursuit. As the commercial plane was about to take off, he decisively pressed down on its wing flap. The pilot was forced to continuously pull the yoke, causing the flap to eventually be torn off and completely destroyed. Pressing his advantage, Sean fired multiple shots into the engine, completely eliminating any chance of escape. In desperation, Castor Troy shot the innocent pilot, turned the plane around, and headed straight for the hangar. Fortunately, at the critical moment, he shut down the engines. Otherwise, both he and the plane would have exploded into dust and ashes. Castor Troy was unharmed, drawing 2 golden pistols to engage in a fierce firefight with the arriving agents. No one expected Castor Troy, with 2 guns in hand, to have such formidable combat power. Luckily, the agents had the advantage in numbers, so Pollux was quickly subdued. Seeing his younger brother captured, Castor Troy had no choice but to fight to the death. He ran into the maintenance area, coming face to face with the pursuing Sean. The battle was incredibly fierce. In an instant, the two were engaged in hand-to-hand combat, but Castor Troy's guns were out of ammo. He hurriedly knelt on the ground to beg for mercy, but his right hand was secretly drawing a knife. Unfortunately, Sean was prepared. Instead, he was the one who got kicked away. Castor Troy died on the spot. The hatred that had been in Sean's heart for so many years was finally resolved. Ever since his son's death, he had been busy with work, becoming cold to his gentle wife, Eve, and his daughter Jamie had also become a rebellious girl. Now, he could finally take a long rest to make up for his past shortcomings. The technical department discovered a hard drive in Pollux's briefcase, which contained the design for the chemical bomb. But the trickier part was that they didn't know the location of the dirty bomb, let alone when it would detonate. Sean immediately interrogated Pollux, but whether he used harsh words or sweet talk, he refused to say a word unless he could see his brother, Castor Troy. The situation was urgent, but Sean was at a loss. Just as he was burning with anxiety, the head of the technical department offered him a plan. It turned out, Castor Troy wasn't dead but severely injured, having become a vegetable. Under the professor's guidance, the technical department had made a major breakthrough in human physiological reconstruction. They could not only replicate human tissue, but after transplantation, the new tissue could also heal quickly without leaving a trace. Sean and Castor Troy were nearly identical in height, build, skin color, and eye color. The professor could peel off Castor Troy's facial skin, then use a high-tech deforming mask as a medium, with Sean's head as the base and Castor Troy's facial features displayed on the outside. Finally, they would modify his vocal cords to mimic Castor Troy's voice. Plus, Sean had studied Castor Troy for so many years, which was enough to fool everyone. They just needed to extract the intelligence, then transplant the facial skin back. Initially, Sean was very much against it, but thinking of the millions of innocent civilians in Los Angeles, he had no choice but to join this plan. The mission was classified as top secret. There would be no official records, and even Sean's family had to be kept in the dark. No one dared to delay, and the very next day, they began the face-swapping surgery. Before the anesthesia, Sean took off his wedding ring, gave it to his assistant, and told him to keep it safe. Everything was ready. The professor used a pen to mark the outlines, then slowly used a laser to cut the epidermal layer. Thanks to the computer's precise calculations, they successfully removed Sean's facial skin. Next, they just needed to repeat the same procedure on Castor Troy and then transplant the facial skin to complete the process. After a few short days of recovery, Sean's and Castor Troy's facial skin had perfectly merged. Although he was mentally prepared, when he actually saw his current appearance, he still broke down instantly. Perhaps this was a wrong decision from the very beginning, but the bow was drawn and the arrow had flown. Extracting the information about the dirty bomb was the most important thing. The professor used a recording of Castor Troy to calibrate the speech chip in Sean's larynx. According to the plan, he had 2 days, by which time his assistant would come to get him out of prison. Sean, in his new identity, was completely unaware that this trip would be a near-death experience. As the number 2 figure in the FBI, he had now become a dangerous criminal thrown into a high-security prison, which tormented Sean both physically and mentally. He had to try his best to imitate Castor Troy's speech and actions. Otherwise, he would arouse the suspicion of the cunning Pollux. Just as he was racking his brains, the gang leader in the prison took the initiative to start trouble. Sean hadn't fully gotten into character yet and was beaten to a bloody pulp by the unexpected punches. Seeing Pollux's meaningful expression, he knew he had to seize this rare opportunity. He quickly recalled all the information about Castor Troy, stood up, and began to act insane. "I am Castor Troy. I am the king." After gaining Pollux's trust, Sean found out that the dirty bomb was hidden in the Los Angeles Convention Center. All he had to do was wait for his assistant to get him out of prison to resolve the crisis. But he never expected that Castor Troy, who was diagnosed as a vegetable in the hospital, would miraculously wake up. A sharp pain startled him. Seeing Sean's facial skin preserved in a container, Castor Troy had a wicked idea. He hurriedly called his men, had them kidnap the professor and bring him to the hospital overnight, forcing him to transplant Sean's facial skin onto him. After 2 long days that felt like a year, the day of his release finally arrived. As the prison gates slowly opened, Sean witnessed a horrifying scene. The person who came was not his assistant, but the face-swapped Castor Troy. After completing the surgery last night, he had eliminated everyone who knew about it. This meant that no one could help Sean prove his identity. He would be imprisoned in the dark jail, while Castor Troy would not only take over his position, but also his wife and child. The truth proved that their skills in wooing women were not on the same level. With just a few sweet words, Castor Troy made the long-depressed Eve beam with joy. A candlelight dinner helped Eve rediscover her former passion. What made Sean even more miserable was that Castor Troy also turned Pollux into a witness, getting him out of prison. Completely broken, he pleaded with the warden for help, but they wouldn't easily trust a dangerous criminal. Faced with such a desperate situation, Sean had to think of a way to do something, and his only choice was to break out of prison. Tasting power for the first time, Castor Troy's ambition quickly swelled. He had Pollux confess everything. Just before the bomb was set to detonate, he deliberately created an extremely dangerous situation. By the time the bomb squad arrived, it was already too late. At this moment, he ordered everyone to evacuate the scene, quietly entered the code to stop the bomb's countdown. With this, he naturally became the hero of Los Angeles, and the position of the next FBI director was surely his. Seeing Castor Troy's actions on the news, Sean knew he had to act immediately. He learned that prisoners' iron shoes were only removed when they were to be executed by electric chair. So, Sean deliberately attacked a guard during recreation time, getting his wish to enjoy a round of electric shock therapy. The gang leader, for causing trouble earlier, was also punished. The intense pain left him completely numb, and he quickly fell to the ground, unconscious. Just as Sean predicted, the guards, who already disliked him, helped him take off his shoes, wanting to teach him a lesson and establish their authority, completely unaware of what they were about to face. Just as the electric chair was about to be locked and turned on, the gang leader on the ground suddenly jumped up. The guards were caught off guard and taken down one by one. It turned out, Sean and the gang leader while appearing to be in fierce opposition, had secretly planned the prison break beforehand. Only the guards on the second floor armed with rifles were a slight threat. Sean casually threw a bottle of sulfuric acid into the air, timing it perfectly to shoot and break it. While the guards' reinforcements had not yet arrived, Sean quickly went upstairs, escaping the execution room. The gang leader picked up the weapons from the ground. He shot open the control room door, rushed inside, and killed all the guards within. Sean, who had just arrived, immediately opened the prison cells, releasing all the prisoners. The entire prison instantly descended into chaos, and the guard force was insufficient to suppress the riot. This was the perfect opportunity for the two to escape. However, regrettably, the gang leader was hit by multiple shots while providing cover for Sean. Only Sean escaped alone, but when he looked around, he immediately despaired. It turned out the prison was not on land, but was a converted offshore oil rig. Before he could compose himself, an armed helicopter appeared. Sean didn't have time to think, he just ran for his life. Facing intense fire from the air, he used all his skills to evade, but if this continued, he would sooner or later be shot into a sieve. With no other choice, he had to risk it all. He jumped with all his might, plunging from the rig dozens of meters high, falling into the vast sea, and disappearing completely. Castor Troy quickly learned of the prison riot. When he heard that Sean was missing, presumed dead, a bad feeling rose in his heart. If Sean hadn't drowned, he would surely return for revenge. Just as he was troubled, he encountered Jamie being harassed by a friend. In his foul mood, he needed an outlet for his anger, so he beat the man to a pulp. Elated, he even pulled out a butterfly knife and gave it to Jamie, telling her that if she ever encountered a situation like tonight's again, to stab her opponent hard in the thigh and twist, so the wound would be difficult to heal. And this very knife would play a crucial role in the subsequent events. Just as Castor Troy predicted, Sean did not die after jumping from the rig, but used the cover of night to escape back to Los Angeles. He had thoroughly researched Castor Troy's connections, so he went straight to the bald-headed drug lord, Dietrich, wanting to borrow his power to deal with Castor Troy. Seeing his old friend alive, Dietrich didn't hesitate, deciding to help him with all his might. He quickly brought out a suitcase, filled with all of Castor Troy's cool gear. No one knew that the man before them was not the real Castor Troy. Sean also seriously laid out his plan. He intended to wait for a clear moonlit night, wait for Castor Troy to be sound asleep, then sneak in and kill him, even rattling off the house's security code. At this point, a henchman showed suspicion, asking how he knew these things so well. Sean casually replied, "I slept with his wife." The operation was set for the next evening. Sean, who was exhausted, needed to rest and recover his strength. Unexpectedly, as soon as he entered the room, he was punched hard by Sasha. It turned out she was Dietrich's sister, once the lover of the real Castor Troy, and had even borne him a lovely son. Sasha had sacrificed everything for Castor Troy, but Castor Troy, being wild and freedom-loving by nature, still didn't know about his son's existence. Hearing Sasha's heartbroken confession, the kind-hearted Sean could only use this false shell to sincerely apologize to the mother and son on behalf of Castor Troy. Sasha was also moved by this unexpected gentleness. But they didn't notice that Pollux on the opposite roof had secretly tipped off the authorities. Castor Troy guessed that Sean would seek help from Dietrich, so he quickly led a large force to surround the building, giving them orders to shoot to kill, leaving no one alive. When the special forces broke down the door, a fierce gun battle between the police and criminals officially began. Dietrich's group, after recovering from the shock, immediately grabbed their weapons and exchanged fire with the police. Although the police were well-equipped and had a numerical advantage, the brothers on the other side were all seasoned gunmen. And even Sasha picked up a weapon from the ground and fired back madly. In an instant, the police suffered heavy casualties. Castor Troy was forced to call for more reinforcements, launching a fierce assault from multiple directions. The henchmen who ran out of ammunition finally couldn't hold on and were shot down one by one. In the midst of the chaos, Castor Troy secretly aimed at Sasha and the child. At the critical moment, Dietrich took the fatal shot for them. He struggled to get up, telling Sasha to run with the child. Then, he instructed Sean to take care of them before collapsing. Dietrich had died tragically helping him, and Sean was enraged to the extreme, vowing to tear Castor Troy to pieces. The moment they saw each other through the glass, they started shooting at each other wildly. After a while, neither had gained the upper hand. Seeing that Castor Troy had reinforcements arriving, Sean had to leave for now. He ran while dodging the pursuit, reaching the rooftop. Pollux seemed unwilling to let him go so easily and climbed the stairs himself to block his path. Sean didn't hesitate to launch a flying scissor kick, which Pollux couldn't dodge, causing him to fall to his death. Seeing his brother fall to his death before his eyes, Castor Troy couldn't hide his grief, his heart twisting in pain. For unilaterally dispatching police forces and causing the massacre, Castor Troy was reprimanded by the FBI director, Victor Lazaro. In his anger, he developed a murderous intent, wanting to replace Lazaro. He noticed that Lazaro, being overly agitated, seemed to be having a relapse of his old heart condition. So he suddenly struck, hitting Lazaro's heart hard with his elbow. Lazaro immediately stopped breathing. He then faked the scene before calling for an ambulance, lying that Lazaro had a heart attack. Meanwhile, Sean, while Castor Troy was at work, snuck into the house. He knew Eve had the day off, so he intended to tell her the truth, hoping to gain her trust. But his current face, in Eve's eyes, was that of her son's killer. Although he recounted many old stories of theirs, it only made Eve more terrified. Seeing her unmoved, Sean had to play his last card. He told Eve that he had type O blood, while Castor Troy had type AB. If she didn't believe him, she could find a chance to verify it. After saying everything, Sean left with teary eyes. But his appearance could be considered an answer for the confused Eve as to why her once dull, unromantic husband had suddenly become so smooth-tongued. That very night, while Castor Troy was asleep, she secretly used a blood lancet to prick him. The mosquito bite-like pain did not arouse Castor Troy's suspicion. In the middle of the night, Eve rushed to the hospital, eager to test the blood sample's type. Finally, the result was indeed type AB, and Sean had been waiting at the hospital all along. They never expected that husband and wife would finally recognize each other in this way. Now, Lazaro had been murdered. If nothing unexpected happened, Castor Troy would be the next FBI director. If he came to power, the consequences would be unimaginable. The only chance to eliminate him was at Lazaro's funeral 3 days later. Lazaro was the mentor who had guided Sean, yet now he couldn't personally see him off one last time. With a heart full of sorrow, he could only hide behind the church to pay his respects, hoping his mentor would bless him with the ability to kill Castor Troy. After Lazaro's funeral ended, the final life-and-death duel was about to begin. The cunning Castor Troy had no intention of fighting Sean fairly. He took Eve hostage and had his subordinates bring Jamie to the church. The situation at the scene immediately became complicated. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Sasha, after settling her child, arrived at the church in time. However, just as the two were about to control the situation, another of Castor Troy's men suddenly appeared, putting Sean and Sasha at a disadvantage once again. Everyone was on edge. A great battle was about to erupt. After a fierce exchange, Eve was safe. Castor Troy took advantage of the chaos and fled without a trace. The most unfortunate thing was that Sasha was shot and critically wounded. Before she passed, she entrusted her child to Sean, hoping the child would follow the path of righteousness and not repeat her mistakes. Sasha's death further enraged Sean. He fired 2 guns at Castor Troy like a madman. The two fought and ran from the church to the upper floor. Just as they were struggling, Jamie's appearance caught Sean off guard. Unaware of the fake Sean's identity, she mistakenly thought Sean wanted to harm her and ran around frantically in the rain of bullets. On top of that, Castor Troy used intense suppressive fire. The doves on the ground miraculously coordinated, providing cover for Sean to get close and begin the hand-to-hand combat he excelled at. Finally, Castor Troy gradually weakened and was being choked. But just then, Jamie picked up the gun from the ground and pointed it at the two of them. Seizing the opportunity, Castor Troy kept urging her to shoot, while Sean's explanations were useless. Fortunately, the bullet only grazed Sean's shoulder, but Jamie became Castor Troy's hostage. With a bewildered look, she only came to her senses after hearing their conversation, deeply regretting her previous action. Unexpectedly, Jamie suddenly pulled out the butterfly knife he had given her, stabbed him hard in the thigh, and even gave it a twist. Sean unloaded his gun into him. In pain, Castor Troy casually killed 2 arriving agents, not daring to linger, and fled towards the sea. Before leaving, he didn't forget to fire wildly at Sean on the shore, blowing up 2 gas tanks and causing a huge explosion. He thought Sean had been burned to ashes, but not long after, he saw him miraculously giving chase. The two sped in their speedboats. A slight mistake could mean death. This dangerous act was quickly intercepted by the Coast Guard. At this point, Castor Troy had completely lost control. He fired first, emptying a whole magazine at the police. Unexpectedly, the police were so weak. Next, he swerved sharply, ramming the unprepared Sean to one side and crashing straight into the Coast Guard's boat ahead. Sean was lucky to escape. He had to quickly stop the crazed Castor Troy to prevent more innocent people from being hurt. He used all his strength to jump onto Castor Troy's boat, and the two wrestled inconclusively. By the time they reacted, they were about to crash into an obstacle on the beach. The two fell to the ground, and before they could catch their breath, they were fighting again. Castor Troy played dirty, picking up an iron bar and landing a critical blow on Sean. Just as Sean fell in pain, he suddenly saw a harpoon gun half-submerged on the beach. As Castor Troy was about to press his advantage, he was unexpectedly shot in his other leg. At this point, he had completely lost his ability to fight. Seeing that he was about to die, Castor Troy didn't want Sean to live in peace either. He held the about-to-fire harpoon gun with one hand, then used the iron bar to shred his own face, wanting Sean to never be able to return to his former self. Enraged, Sean finished him off on the spot. With Castor Troy's death, Sean had finally avenged his mentor and his son. Eve promptly alerted the police and explained the truth, preventing Sean from being mistakenly shot by the police. His superiors, after learning of Sean's situation, sent the best surgeon from Washington, using the professor's research results to operate on him again. At the end of the movie, Sean's facial skin was perfectly transplanted back. He also took Sasha's son home to adopt, forming a new family of 4, not only to fulfill Sasha's wish, but also to make up for the shortcomings with his family during his busy life. Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching. What do you think of this movie? Please comment down below.